But what made you be open to the Catholic Church, though? I mean, because you're not some sort of diehard Calvinist. You weren't raised in a church where you were had a lot of negative Catholic things thrown on you. You don't have you don't have all these prejudices that some people have. So,
Right.
but what was it that made you? I mean, what's going on in your life though that made you say, okay, something I could go into a different direction. It's not going to cost me anything.
Right. So, well, actually, it's not going to cost me anything. At 18 years old, barely started life. So it's not like I had a girlfriend, not for lack of trying, but I didn't have a girlfriend or, whatever. My parents loved me and I didn't know it cost me very little to come into the church. But what really happened was, and I'm not kidding, it was the free pizza that got me into the first mass.
Fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Arf, hounds of heaven. Jesus loves you and is there for you. Welcome in to the David L. Gray Show, off code and unscripted. Got one thing for you this show. It is a continuation of our conversation with our friends about what happened. What was that one thing in your life that changed everything, that sent you on just a fundamentally different direction and you haven't been the same since? So this is episode number 5. And our guest today is Kyle Whittington. He has a really cool YouTube channel that you should check out, that you should subscribe to. And we'll talk more about that and his faith journey and find out what was that thing that changed everything. And the show begins now. Kyle grew up in the heart of the Bible Belt in Oklahoma. He converted to the faith in 2010. Now married, a father of 4 and counting. In 2011, Kyle went to Franciscan University, Steubenville. Franciscan University, Steubenville. I was going to say it the other way. For about a year, ran out of money. Then he joined the Air Force, served 10 years. Throughout the process, he always had an interest in learning more about the faith, which was renewed after he discovered the beauty of the traditional Latin Mass. Now, Kyle is focusing on launching his own YouTube channel, which is going to focus on conversion stories and apologetics and really just sharing his own faith journey. So I'm excited about that. But now he's here. He's on the David L. Gray Show. Welcome in, Kyle.
All right. Thanks, David. Good. Great to talk to you again.
Yeah. So, I wanted to get this out just about your YouTube channel. So I know Kyle. I met him personally. He lives in a neighborhood. And so we've met in person. He also goes to the Institute of Christ the King in St. Louis. So I had never saw him there, but I know he's there somewhere in the backdrop the times that I am there. But so yeah, really excited to have you on. But we'll just hop in real quick into your YouTube channel. What's going on there? I see you're going to be talking about conversion stories and your own faith journey. And what inspired you to have your own channel?
Yeah, so thanks. So it all started with Matt Frad and his Locals channel. On one of his morning podcasts, he asked, hey, why don't you all film your conversion story? Just post it up YouTube. I'd love to get to know you all better. So I thought, hey, why not? So just on my laptop, nothing fancy, just hit record and just gave a brief overview of how I came to Catholicism and just threw it up on YouTube. I was expecting maybe tops 12 people to watch it. But I think now it's close to like 4,000 views, which obviously, it's not that's definitely in don't quit your day job, kid territory. But
that video is called, you guys can find it online if you're interested. So the video is called How Free Pizza Helped Me Become a Catholic. So give us a skinny version of this story. How did pizza help you become a Catholic?
Well, that's a great question. So it all started off with in high school. I was sitting in the Bible Belt in Oklahoma, And I'm sitting there, a cute girl invites me to church, and I'm sitting over there like, that's a Catholic church. Nobody goes to those. Catholics
Okay.
are going to hell. Pretty sure that if I go to hell, or pretty sure if I go to that church, I'm going to hell. So I'm worried about
Yeah.
my soul. You're really cute. Thanks, but no thanks. But then it was just like, there's going to be free pizza there though. And that's what tipped it. And I was like, okay, all right, sold. I'm there. And just
Wow.
kept coming back. One thing led to another. And it's like a year and a half after that conversation, I was being received into the church.
Wow. So you're not even that hard to convince. You just got to show you just a little bit of food and you're in.
Yeah, exactly. You hear conversion stories like yours that are just like, wow, they went through so much struggle. If you think of our Lord as a master angler, master fisherman, some people it's the perfect bait, and then they get into the water, and then it's just a fight and a struggle to get in. Me, it was like God walked up to me and just was like, "Get in the boat, nerd," and I was just like, "Oh, okay, all right, this is what we're doing now."
That's great. Yeah, I love a hero's journey right there. Beginning with
Yeah.
pizza. So, I mean, what were you doing before then? Because 2010. First of all, how old are you in 2010?
So 2010, I was received in 2010 when I was 18, but the
18.
journey really kind of started when I was 16.
Okay.
I had just come back from a trip to Europe that I had managed to go on, and I'd been to the Vatican and everything. So I had a few questions, but like not like he was like, "Come to mass." I don't know about that one. I'll ask questions, but
Yeah.
not doing that weird ritual stuff you people are into. So, but yeah, growing up, like when my grandmother, before she passed away, she had always taken us to a Pentecostal church.
Okay.
So, very charismatic and whatnot. And I didn't understand it. And after she had passed away, that was, no more of that. But, but she did kind of instill that love of God in us growing up. So that never went away. And, in this town of 600 people that I grew up in, there were, I'm not exaggerating, maybe like 10 churches. And I just trying to figure out which one was like, well, one of these has to be true, obviously, because there's only 10 churches in the world. Um, and, I got into history and reading it. And then after I started going to a Catholic church, that's whenever I was really convicted. It's like, okay, I got to get to the bottom of this. And,
Okay.
it didn't take long for me to go, oh, wow, there's actually something to this. But yeah, and here we are.
Oh wow. So, I mean, were you anti-Catholic?
I don't want to say like staunchly anti-Catholic, but certainly wasn't pro-Catholic. The Catholicism had come up a few times. When we would go on long trips, my mom tried to read the Bible to us like once, and I remember when the call "No Man Father" came up, my mom paused and she was just like, interesting. Them Catholics call priest father. That's not supposed to do that." And even then, even now, my mom will still say cheap shots like that, and it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
it was never a positive thing, but I don't necessarily know that like I was anti-Catholic.
Yeah. Yeah. But what made you be open to the Catholic Church though? I mean, because you're not some sort of diehard Calvinist. You weren't raised in a church where you were had a lot of negative Catholic things thrown on you. You don't have you're not you don't have all these prejudices that some people have. So,
Right.
but what was it that made you? I mean, what's going on in your life though that made you say, okay, something I could go into a different direction. It's not going to cost me anything.
Right. So, well, actually, it's not going to cost me anything. At 18 years old, you barely started life. So it's not like I had a girlfriend, not for lack of trying, but I didn't have a girlfriend or, whatever. My parents loved me and I didn't know that didn't, it cost me very little to come into the church. But
Yeah.
what really happened was, and I'm not kidding, it was the free pizza that got me into the first mass at St. Patrick's Church in Denison, Texas, because that's where I went. The the priest there. Now, at the first mass that I ever went to, guitar solos, drums and
Oh,
all that. But as a
oh,
16-year-old kid who had a terrible taste, I loved it.
oh. So
I,
this, so
you
you
know,
went to so your first mass was just a mass nightmare. It's the type of thing I
yeah,
talk about.
yes, exactly. But
Wow.
it's so crazy. But it's just like this is where it's just like, okay, this is hand of God. This is the grace of God, because this is not supposed to work, but it did on me. And maybe that's just my own stupidity, grace of God, combination of the two. But it was so good. But the priest there, his name is Father John. He has since been reassigned, but he just had such a way with connecting with teenagers. He would always cater his homilies in a way that, like, what's important to a teenager right now. So that's what we would do. Wednesday nights were for the life team. And there's actually, looking forward now, or after being involved in some youth programs, it's kind of rare to have a priest that's actually involved with the program.
Mm.
And he was involved, and he was intelligent, he was kind. Before mass, we would do like the young men would go to a different way. We called it Bob, Band of Brothers.
Oh, okay.
And then the women went to Wild, which is Women in Love with the Divine.
Hmm.
But that created an environment to where I could ask questions. Or questions would get answered that I wouldn't even ask. I would just be sitting there quietly listening, and I don't want to be rude. But then we, hey, let's talk about this. Oh, wow, that is an
Yeah.
objection I had.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. And it just slowly just chipped away. And yeah, so it was fun. And it eventually, one of the youth leader, he mentioned how it's like, oh, Kyle, why don't I ever see you on Sundays? It's like, oh, he just comes on Wednesdays. And I was just kind of like, okay, that's kind of weird, actually, that I'm not coming on Sundays. And eventually I got more and more regular. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's really so. There's something to be said there, just about the idea of invitation, right? So, the young lady, I mean, she invited you, and so
Right.
is that something you think like Catholics are lacking? Because I don't hear that a lot. But did she invite you to like mass, or was it to the Bob program?
It was to the whole shebang. So,
Okay.
from where I grew up, so I grew up in Oklahoma, a little town called Boca Chico, and it's if you Google it, you can see that it's in southeastern Oklahoma, like here, and you just cross into the Red River, you're into Texas, but it was still about a 45-minute to an hour drive to get there. So if you were coming for everything, like, and
Oh, okay.
we were teenagers, so gas money, and yeah, we all just rode together. So, like, and plus, like, her older brother was like, she was like a grade below me, and her older brother was a year above me.
Yeah.
So, like, I actually kind of started connecting with her older brother too,
Yeah.
who ultimately became my RCIA sponsor. So that was
Wow.
really cool. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So it's like a
But yeah.
whole thing. This is like a 45-minute trip. It's intentional. It's a whole thing.
Oh yes. No,
Okay.
you're not coming to you weren't coming to this on accident.
Okay. Wow. 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 So you're 18, you come into the church in 2010. And so would you have went to Franciscan University of Steubenville heretofore, or what like put you on that path?
Ah. So I was a smart kid in a small school, which meant that I was lazy and had terrible grades. So my original plan was I was not going to college at all. I was just going to go straight to the Air Force. That
Oh,
you know,
okay.
not interested in college, whatever. But after I had graduated high school in my senior year, I wanted to go to the Steubenville conference, Steubenville South in Alexandria, Louisiana.
Okay.
And while they were there, they played a video that was advertising Franciscan. And I was watching that and just felt this really strong call that's like, Kyle, this is where you need to go. And I was terrified. Oh, I was absolutely terrified because I hadn't applied. This is the summer after I had graduated. Hadn't applied, no scholarships, nothing. And I was visibly distressed. And at one point, they had like a gift shop set up, and I was just kind of wandering aimlessly. And one of the leaders, Joanna, she came up to me, and she was kind of like the mom of the group, amazing woman. And she came up to me, and she's like, "What's wrong, Mijo?" Because like she could see that I was upset, and I was just like, "I received a call to go to Franciscan," and she was like, "Oh, that's amazing! Congratulations!" And I gave her this look like, "Are you crazy? What do you mean that's amazing? I don't have any money. I haven't even applied. I can't do this." And she was just like, "Kyle, God has enough money. If He called you there, you got to go."
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I, I guess you're right. I do. So ultimately, I had to take a semester off because that was just a lot to pack in like 2 months. So I took the fall semester off and I started in the spring of 2011. And that is a fun adventure just in and of itself right there.
Yeah. 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 So, but you ended up not staying at Franciscan. I guess you didn't want to take out the whole student loan thing and all that.
Well, yes. So not for once again, not for lack of trying. I eventually got to the point. So Franciscan's not cheap.
Right.
If you're not from around the area, it's not
Yeah,
an
'cause you don't
inexpensive
get
school.
in-state. Yes, you're not an in-state student. You're out of state, so that's already more money.
Yeah, I think whenever in 2011 it was like 15 grand a semester for everything, tax, title, and license.
Wow.
And and we had gotten my first semester covered, but then the second semester, that's when everything kind of fell apart. And my parents said that we're not co-signing any student loans for you. We're not going to let you saddle yourself with debt because I was a theology major, and like at
Oh,
Franciscan, you have to sign a waiver that says that if you're going in as undergrad theology, it's like, hey, if you go broke after school, you're not going to blame the university for this. So it was just like, okay, so you're literally if you're going to be a married man and you have a degree in theology, it leaves you rather limited in your career options.
exactly.
So I made some amazing friends. I met my wife there, amazing
Okay.
woman.
Yeah.
And so, I do really feel like I really was called there. I did basically accomplish what I was sent there for, and ultimately help my wife discern out of being a nun. But yeah, you got a habit breaker here. So,
I mean, were you discerning the priesthood at any point in time?
oh yes, I was probably discerning it in about the dumbest way you could, because my thought process was if I become a priest, that's like guaranteed straight to heaven.
Hmm.
And I had no idea what I was doing. I was a fresh convert, didn't really talk to anybody about it. I tell my wife after going to the Institute of Christ the King and seeing their videos of their seminary, I told my wife, "Is like, you're lucky I met you first, because had I seen this, like,
Yeah.
probably would have gone there." And she was looking at a video of their nuns, and she was like, right back at you, buddy."
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. 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 How did you find Steubenville while you were there? Was it I mean, you're fairly a newer, Catholic at that time. You didn't
mhm.
grow up in, hearing a whole lot about the type of culture and atmosphere they had there, but you were hearing some things as you're on your way there. How did you find it, the atmosphere there?
Well, so for me, keep in mind, I was kind of working my way up there. So I started off with like, the life team standard, the sort of parish culture. And then I went into Steubenville, and that was not a culture shock at all. But the culture in Steubenville is rather interesting because you've got the charismatic and the traditionalists living side by side, almost in
Mhm.
harmony. They're not trying to kill each other, uh, which is something that a lot of times we get told is not possible. And it the community there, like I made a wonderful group of friends there. In fact, we still hang out. I just hosted a retreat at my house just this past month, and it's the strongest community that I've ever experienced. And for the first time since my conversion, I wasn't the Catholic guy, I was Kyle. And that was something that I did not experience again until I found the Institute community in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And because I mean, when in the Air Force, yeah, I was the crazy Catholic guy.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but I love the community there.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's good to hear. So you hear things lately about some of the presidents they've been having lately, and some of the professors that they've been having, and this, sometimes you hear these things a little bit disappointing. I went there, started my master's of arts degree in theology there. I didn't finish, ended up transferring to Ohio Dominican. But I would go there for some of the lectures and things like that. Always thought well of the environment there, and I was always impressed by the fact that you can go there at the age of 18, and by the age of 22, you would have found your wife, right? Or you have found your husband. I always thought that was, I always liked that aspect of it. They had a group that came out of there. They're putting on YouTube videos for a while, New Generation Catholics or something like that. They had a lot of Catholics out there getting involved in what they were calling back then a new evangelization, and so yeah, I'm really hopeful for that university to keep fostering people's vocations, at least. So
yeah, actually, two of my friends so Franciscan doesn't have fraternities; it has households. Two of my household brothers are now priests, and one of them. Well, I mean, they're both great guys. One of them, I don't want to say that too publicly for his sake, but yeah, no, they're both great guys.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So you go off to how'd you find the Air Force culture being a Catholic? I know you told me that you're a Catholic, Kyle, and things like that. And how was that experience? How did that help or harm you're growing up as a young Catholic?
So I would say that the Air Force culture, from a faith perspective, was / still is pretty terrible. I went. It was a. I mean, I almost got whiplash because going from Franciscan, from where you hear military stories of the military, they're these, these heroic and virtuous men, and then you get there and you realize that basically everybody's idea of a good time on a Friday night is to go to the strip club. Yeah. And going from an environment where literally my friends would go outside of strip clubs and pray to now we're going to be patrons. It was quite the culture shock. And then I don't know, I can't speak for Air Force at large, but at least in the shop that I was in, active duty, it was not uncommon to hear people brag about having affairs and whatnot. And sometimes I was just kind of sitting there thinking like, man, couldn't you have the common decency to be ashamed of that? Like, just don't talk about it at least, please. And it was rather isolating. I did get married in 2014, and once my wife came into the house, things got better. I actually got pretty involved with the St. Patrick's Cathedral in Fort Worth, Texas, their youth program. That was pretty cool. The only problem with that was rotating shifts. I couldn't stay terribly active in it because, well, if I had to work in the evening, then I'm not involved. So it was rather isolating, and I had a lot of fun. I'm definitely glad I don't have to do it again, though.
Yeah. How'd you work on the spiritual life at that time? What type of devotions were you would turn to, and to just talk about your spiritual life just during that phase in the military? How did that grow?
So the short answer is that it didn't. I didn't do any devotions. And anybody who's been at this for a little while is like, if you're not progressing, you're dying.
Yeah.
And I kind of consider like the conversion in Franciscan like that supercharge that I got.
So that was
because
the hill. That was the, what do you call that? The mountaintop experience, right? Franciscan.
right, and because over the next, I was 6 years active duty. Over the next 6 years, it slowly dwindled with little bumps, but it was dwindling. That by the time I got out in 2018, I was dang near depleted. It honestly took a very good friend of mine coming out as an atheist that made me realize, oh, I'm on that same path.
Wow. Wow.
And that's when we started taking things very seriously. We quit going to the local parish, and I will say no more on that. We went to the cathedral in St. Louis, which is beautiful. It's great, but there was still something missing. And then ultimately that ended us up at St. Francis de Sales. And that is where now we're back in the growing direction with speed bumps, obviously. I'm not a saint, at least not yet.
Yeah. Let me back up for one moment though. What did you think of liturgy with, like, the military chaplains that would come in on the Air Force Base? How did you find that type of liturgy in comparison to what you had been experiencing prior to Franciscan and other places?
Yeah. So a lot of the military chaplains, I will give them this, is that they are doing the best that they can with what they have. However, there was an experience that I had at a location at a time that the priest saw that I was going up like this because I was just in need of going to confession. And he came up to me after mass and he said, "Oh, are you going through RCIA?" And I said, "Oh no, I was received a couple of years ago. I need to go to confession." And he was like, "Oh no, if you're in a state of mortal sin, you just go ahead and receive and just bring that up at your next confession." And I was sitting there like, I don't know a lot, but I know that's not right. But past that was a concern. But the liturgical stuff, I can't really remember one. I deployed to Afghanistan for a time, and the forward deployed chapels were obviously bare, but we had an African priest, and if you've ever met an African priest, those guys are something else.
Yeah.
And he was not afraid to, like, okay, I see a lot of officers here, but you enlisted guys need to pick it up. And it was just like, oh, yes, sir. But I ultimately, that kind of ended up with me being military chaplain, because some of the way that the Air Force views chaplains, or the DoD at large views chaplains, is mostly like, we have a chaplain, therefore you should be fine. It's like, no, I need sacraments. I need a priest. Well, we have this Baptist minister, if you'd like to talk to him. It's like, now, mind you, one of the finest men that I ever met in my life, well, finest serviceman ever, Chaplain George Jones in U.S. Air Force Reserve. One of the finest men I've ever met, Protestant chaplain. But he didn't kind of understand. Like, hey, could you help me find someplace to go to confession? And he's like, well, I can hear it. And I'm like, you could hear it and literally nothing else. Yeah. But if I had to sum it up in a word for the liturgy of the military, for the most part, it's lacking. There's plenty of room for improvement.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, the cathedral in St. Louis, it is almost about as reverent as you can get for a Novus Ordo. I mean, they do well. It seems to be serious worship, very beautiful atmosphere. I mean, just aesthetically, even acoustics, nothing like it. And you do.
And they're using the altar rails again.
Yeah, and because of that, when you walk in there, you do feel like you're in the other space, right? You do feel like you left the world, and okay, something is different going on here. So I will say that about the cathedral. It is serious Catholic worship in they do well. Oftentimes the bishop is there, and a couple of times I've been there, he just happened to be there. I was like, oh, so yeah, serious worship. But that wasn't enough. That you said there was something still missing.
So my wife has a degree in sacred music with a concentration in voice. So I don't want to talk bad about any of the clergy there because, like you said, like whenever it comes to Novus Ordo, like you will be hard pressed to find someplace that's better.
Yeah.
That being said, there was still just we'd hear the homilies and it would just be, yeah, what you said is technically true. It's everybody knows that usually when you go to a Novus Ordo, the homilies, you walk out, but you've probably forgotten pretty much everything by the time you walk out. So obviously the sacraments are there, the real presence is there. Nobody's denying that. But especially on the musical front, my wife was just like, St. Francis de Sales is over there. We could check it out.
How did you guys know about it? Did you hear about it, or how did you know there was something? How did you know there was something different there?
Well, let me put this on my shoulders. I had like everything against the Latin Mass. I was not a fan. I'd gone to a couple of ones in Steubenville. Actually, they now have one regularly on campus. But the priest, God bless his heart, I got to experience some of his first few solemn high masses, and he was in need of some practice, which he has since gotten. But he wouldn't do anything while the choir was singing. Which, if you've been to Latin Mass, the priest is supposed to continue on even with the choir singing. So his high masses would take like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking. Is like, I'm not going to a Latin Mass. That's a little ridiculous. But I had a friend at Franciscan, big tratty guy, who would always talk about these things, and I would, say like, "Well, the Novus Ordo is better because of this," and he goes, "Oh wow, yeah, you're right. It would make some more sense if you went to an orchestra and the conductor faced you." And it's just he would just hit me with these things, but he was kind of a smug and a jerk about it, and I didn't appreciate that. So but I knew about DeSales because he was also from Missouri. And he says, "Oh yeah, every time I'm in St. Louis, I try to go to St. Francis de Sales." And we actually had visited there in 2011 before we moved to St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
So it's funny because I was talking with someone there, and it's like, "Oh yeah, we went there. This visiting canon was there," and he was just like, he was only here for like one weekend, and I'm like, "Yeah," and that was the weekend I was here. He was like, "Oh, okay," but so we knew that it was there. But it was me. I was like, listen, I'm not literally. I think I said something along the lines of, I think that there's a pope, so therefore we can't go to the Latin Mass, because I was so ignorant. And my wife was just, bless her heart, she was just like, yeah, and this community doesn't deny that. And I didn't realize at the time that she was praying her heart out that I would be inspired to pull my head out of my butt. But and eventually it was funny because I remember we were eating ice cream at an Oberweis over in St. Louis County.
Yeah.
And from her perspective, because I hadn't been leading up to this, and I was like, I think tomorrow we're going to go to Mass at St. Francis de Sales. And she was just like, I'm sorry, did I just hear you right? And I was like, yeah, I think we should at least give it a try. I always said like, oh, I want to know Latin first. It's like, at that time we had 3 small children. I'm not going to learn Latin. And she showed me a video. And I'll never forget the line. It was, well, I don't understand what the priest is saying. Well, he's not talking to you. And it just clicked. And I was like, oh, it's not about me. Oh. And we showed up. The current rector, Canon Coggeshall, we showed up right about the same time he did, and like his first homily, he showed up, and his first homily was, "I'm not here so you can be mediocre Catholics." And I was just like, registration form. I need it. We need one. And we signed up, and we found that the community is wonderful. We came for the liturgy, we came for the music. We're staying for the community, though. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Great community. That's pretty fascinating. So, so your wife somehow senses that the institute, because you have a few options in the diocese. I think there's one option in the Belleville diocese down by the log cabin one. So you have a few options. You have the oratory of St. Nicholas with St. Gregory with Monsignor Eugene Moore. So, but the whole shebang over at the Institute Christ the King with the music is phenomenal. It's they treat it as if it's a score, like the math is a score for it's a whole thing. And the community, very vibrant community. I think first Sundays, got the whole donut thing going on in the basement, right?
Oh, that's every Sunday.
Every Sunday, you got the donuts down in the basement. A lot of people are down there, and in the canons, they're just devoted people. So I can see why your wife thought that would be best for the family, and obviously prayer works, right? Somehow turned something on, inspired you through the Holy Spirit, but what are like some of the, and I like what you said as well about the priest isn't speaking to you. And I think I said that to my daughter one time. It's like occasionally we'll go maybe every other month, because we hop around a lot when I don't have to be on base. But she had the whole thing. It was like, what is he saying? I don't understand him. And sometimes she'll come into my office, and I'm back there praying. She leaves me alone. Dad, I can hear her. She came in here and she could see me praying, and at the kneeler, and she leaves. And I compared it to that. I said, well, when you see me praying, do you know what I'm praying about? Do you know? You said, no, I just leave, or I stand there and wait. All right. So oftentimes I'm praying for you, and the priest is praying for you, and it's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to hear what I'm saying or understand it.
That's why he gets paid the big bucks.
For you. Yeah. He's praying for you, and it's fine. He's interceding for you. You don't have to understand every word or hear every word. So I really like that. That's a good one. But what are some other things you had to overcome though?
Oh. It was all just a lot of misunderstandings on my part, because and I know you probably got some viewers who are, attendees of the SSPX. So I've definitely nothing against the SSPX, but I was under the false impression that the SSPX were a set of contests, and that all Latin masses were exclusively done by the SSPX. So a lot of it was just me learning, and also finding out that even we're not going to the SSPX chapel here in St. Louis, but also finding out that situation is not as clear cut as I thought it was.
Yeah,
and so that was really it, honestly, and it was I was seeing a lot of things that just sort of made sense. And it was a stupid meme, but it was very potent in my mind, at least. It said, if you're driving a bus, how do you want the driver facing? This way or toward the people? And I was sitting there thinking, man, that's such a good analogy. Why am I doing that? And even whenever we were in Fort Worth, and I remember being a liturgy critic, and it was just eventually it kind of got to the point where I just asked myself, wait a minute, I have options. I don't have to keep coming here. Like we
Mm,
know where we can go. And especially
mhm.
once the kids got older and they started paying attention, that was just,
Yeah.
we got to take this seriously. So I'll just kind of those things. But once I got over the I can't understand, that was honestly the big thing. And if any hesitations that I had of like continuing to go, as soon as we heard I'm not here so you can be mediocre Catholics, done. That just turned me over. I'm done.
Yeah.
It was
Is your wife she a cradle Catholic?
she's not. We are actually both converts.
You're both converts.
We are both converts. Yeah.
Wow. Look at you converts getting married and now having children and raising them in the faith. Have given birth to all these cradle Catholics. Look at you.
Yeah, we kind of say this, we kind of lament it a little bit because sometimes we think that the focus on evangelization is I don't want to say that's misguided. It's absolutely important, but a lot of times they forget about us young adults with small children. For me, I have no idea what it's like to grow up in a Catholic home. I'm
Oh,
figuring it out as I go along,
I
and
see.
like guys like me, man, I need help, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what same thing with Julia. She doesn't know with what it was like to grow up in a Catholic home. She converted as a
Yeah.
teenager.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. A little bit at is good as well. I mean, as you're building your own traditions and your own family culture. Um, I mean, it's a fresh opportunity to borrow the good stuff and leave out some of the bad stuff that you hear with people who grew up and the things they took for granted. So yeah, I think it's
mhm,
beautiful that both you guys are converts, and I know that your children, though they are being raised in the faith, they're definitely not going to um, be jaded, or they're not going to take things for granted, right? So
mhm,
yeah, I'm really excited for you guys. Yeah, that's
yeah.
phenomenal. hmm were you worried about what happened in Chicago with America's Pope Supich and what he would suppressing the traditional Latin mass, or at least suppressing the Institute of Christ the King? That whole situation with apparently they didn't want to go along and act contrary to their constitution there.
Mm.
Um, did that concern you about it? That it's coming down to the archdiocese of St. Louis, where we have a bishop there who he comes from Chicago.
Yeah. So, well, let me just preface this with saying that nobody should confuse me with like an official speaker for the institute or anything. And I'm not gonna, as a general rule, I don't like to criticize our ordained clergy. But in a word, no, I'm not worried about it. Maybe initially I was just kind of freaked out about it, but the more I've thought about it, I'm not worried about it.
hmm
Um, it's and the big reason for that is, I mean, it's in the name of the institute. Christ is king. Cardinal Sufich may be the Archbishop of Chicago, but Christ is king. And at the end of the day, the victory's already been won. And do I know how it's going to play out? No. But honestly, I'm not worried. Worry is a useless. I mean, you can find it in scripture. It's like, you're not going to add one more day of worry onto your head. The other thing is, and not a lot of people know this, this is not the first situation like this the Institute has faced.
Hmm.
In the apostolate in Gabon, the original one where the Institute was founded, was shut down for about 5 or 6 years. Similar situation. Um,
And that's in France, correct? In Africa.
so in Africa,
Okay.
so the faculties were withdrawn and they stopped for 5 years. And after a change of the guard, nothing new under the sun, nothing. This too shall pass. New leadership came in, and the situation was reconciled, and they started up again. And now that community in Gabon, Africa, is one of the most flourishing communities in the entire institute. And I mean, if you go and look at the seminarian list for the Institute of Christ the King, take a look at how many black men are on that. They are coming from that apostolate. They're coming from Africa. And I mean, you just look at the videos of it, like there's just so much joy and everything there. And honestly,
wow,
it's one of these days, the Institute owns that building. They're not going anywhere.
yeah,
They're going to be obedient, and they're going to suffer in silence.
yeah,
And when that day comes, whenever those doors can open up again, because nobody knows what's going to happen, it's going to be bigger and better than it ever was. But there are going to be some times. I mean, God exiled Israel. So you can't. Stuff like this has happened before. Much worse things have happened before in church history. I mean, look at the Old Testament. They had way worse leaders than what we have now. So it's just like, and it turned out okay. So, so ultimately, no, I'm not worried about it. And though I will say this, it's probably super easy for me to say that because it wasn't my apostolate that was shut down. So I certainly feel for those that are affected by it, and we pray for the situation every day, and that is it's another good reminder of all of us. One of the reasons why we've gotten to this point that we're in now is that we're not praying for our priests, we're not praying for our bishops, we're not praying for more priests. So when these guys get in, I've heard it said that God gives us the leaders that we deserve. So pray for your priests, pray for your bishops, ask that they be guided by God's will. And, God's alive. He's still a player in this game, the player in the game. So everybody keep praying, and don't give up hope. Despair is a sin. So.
Yeah. And that's a good word of encouragement. I mean, it's nothing wrong with sometimes a seed. Sometimes it lays dormant for a while. It's not dead, right?
Right.
It's just waiting for the right season to come along, and the right climate, the right nourishment, and it does, like as you said, it does flourish. These are just basic things that anyone who has ever grew anything knows. A child is in a womb for 9 months. It's things. That's perfectly fine. Things take time, but in the meantime, like you said, let's nourish the situation, nourish it. That's with our prayers.
And look at church history. The church thrives on persecution. This is nothing new.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good stuff. Kyle Whittington. So people can find you again. I know if they just type in your name, and I'll make sure I have all the links down in the description box below, but they just type in Kyle, and it's WHITTINGTON, and I would put Catholic next to that because I think there's a Kyle Whittington that does maybe sports or something like that I found.
He's into tea.
Tea?
Yeah, okay. He's a British guy and he does tea, but my channel's now bigger than his.
Yeah, so. And that's a good class. Kyle Whittington, tea. Yeah. But yeah, check out Cal. Put the name Catholic next to it if you want to just search in your DuckDuckGo or your Google or whatever. But yeah, hop on over to his YouTube channel. Make sure you sub so we can definitely get him up to 1,000 subs ASAP to unlock some things for him there and keep him going. And so yeah, Cal, such a pleasure having you on the show, man.
Oh, it was a joy to be here.
Yeah. And God bless you and your family, and I hope to see you guys soon, definitely before we hop across the pond, my friend.
Absolutely. Love to have you over anytime.
All right. God bless.